Welcome to The Most Important Thing. I'm Danielle DeMarco Neufeld.
And I'm Greg Neufeld, and together we're exploring how ambitious, busy families can build culture at home.
Because after all, family is the most important thing. Hi, Greg. Hi, everybody. Welcome to TMIT episode 18 on facing fear and grief. Sounds like a heavy one.
Yeah.
Right? This is the 8th episode in our Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto. And the line is, together we will cry and face fear and grief. I will want to take away your pain, but instead I will sit with you and teach you how to feel it. It really resonates with me, this idea of wanting to take away your pain.
Yeah. I want to take away everyone's pain in our family.
Yeah. And, in reflecting on this statement, I would love to separate our conversation into fear and grief. Partially because, as we've discussed, we have had limited experiences of grief as a family, at least it hasn't touched our home like super closely. But I do think that I am much more willing to sit with grief. Like, grief to me feels like a productive emotion, if you will, and something that feels warranted typically. And like moving through it is almost like a rite of passage and something that is healthy. In preparing for this episode, I realized that I do not have the same relationship with fear. Anytime fear comes, whether it's in one of our children or in myself, I cannot wait to get it to go away. Like, I am very reactionary and very resistant to fear in any way. And I have to tell you that even in my reading, in as far as parenting or even reparenting, but as far as parenting is concerned about how to help children with fear and anxiety, the trope that I constantly hear is this is a wiring of us humans that is supposed to help us from a lion attack or a bear, and it has no place in today's society. And I don't know, it feels really black and white to me. And I guess one of the things I'd love to rumble with in this conversation is really like fear setting. Like, what is an appropriate way to feel fear? Because I feel like I understand the arc of grief a bit better than I do like what I'm supposed to do when fear shows up. How does that resonate with you?
First of all, it sounds like you have a superpower.
Oh, hey, thanks.
To want to rid yourself of fear the moment it shows up is so healing. I would say most of the population does not have that same.
I don't know. It feels like a maladaptive response. Like, I would like to be able to sit with fear and tolerate fear more than I currently can. And like, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, for me, at least in my adult life, fear has really been wrapped up with anxiety. But I think honestly, even looking back, like, I've always had big fear. I ran into my parents' room until I was probably like 11 years old every single night because I was scared in the middle of the night. Big fear. Big fear. Cannot watch scary movies, as you know, at all. Still to this day, big fear. Don't love when you travel when we're home. But for me, fear and anxiety are like really intertwined these days. And I think maybe they always have been, and I just didn't know it as anxiety when I was younger. But I would like to say, I can't say for sure, but you tell me, like, much in the same way you can't handle not feeling your best, I hate anxiety. Like, I hate it so much. And it's very, very hard for me to sit with. I just want it to go away.
Yeah. It feels like an appropriate relationship with anxiety, but I think where signals might get crossed is around where anxiety leads to the fear that you're actually in danger, right? Like a true fear versus a silly fear. Like, think about our kids and how some of their fears show up and what's actually real versus what is just being stretched out in their mind. Your relationship with anxiety, I think, is a very strong one and one that's very relatable. But I agree that you do not like fear, and you want to figure out a way to get through it rather than sit with it and understand how founded it necessarily is. Is that kind of making sense?
Yeah, I think gosh, this really is like a therapy session right out of the gate. But I think that if I can relate it to grief and the times in my life where I have experienced grief, I have tools to kind of allow myself to grieve, whether it is like, for me, more recently, the closest experience I've had is when my grandmother died of COVID, right? That was a pretty rough time for me. We were very close. But I allowed myself to experience all the different layers of grief. And those would be the deep sorrow and the tears of joy just for having experienced her in my life. And thanks to your family, I have something called the Mahamrityunjaya chant that I use when I want to express love and goodwill to someone as they are passing. And I don't have those tools in the same way for fear.
Yeah, I don't think you have as much fear, though, as most people.
Oh, I don't know.
That's where I think the superpower is. Like your fears are actually manifested as anxiety, but like a true fear, like something that actually is I think you respond very well to situations where you might be in danger, so to speak, where, you have a fear maybe of our garage door being open or something like that and Winston getting out. But if Winston were to get out, like you would act as opposed to being worried that we're afraid that he's going to get hit by a car. You would go and save that dog.
Yeah, I wonder how related those two things are. Yes, I am very good in a crisis, if that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
If any of the fear were to actually come true.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'm very good in the crisis, but we're kind of dancing around it. So I don't want to spend too much time on my fear and anxiety, but like, I think you and I are probably talking about something similar. So most of my fear and anxiety today is wrapped up around doctors and the medical system. And in particular, the symptom, the most acute symptom is that you cannot take my blood pressure.
Right.
We have no idea what my blood pressure actually is because anytime someone tries to take it, I have a full-blown panic attack.
Right.
And that sucks. It's just annoying. Like, I don't like that aspect of myself.
Sure.
Because I've made a mountain out of a molehill. But it does have roots in something real, right? And so a couple episodes ago, I think in our accountability and respect episode, we talked about how I had and still have significant trauma from Jade's birth. And I think it's fair to say that during Jade's birth, we were victims of malpractice because they were so afraid of preeclampsia that they coerced us into inducing her 3 weeks early, even though I didn't have hypertension, right? I had anxiety-induced blood pressure, and I had walking up 3 flights of subway stairs, running across Central Park and multiple avenues to try to get to the doctor's office, and at 36 weeks pregnant, and having them take my blood pressure the moment I arrived. And still then only slightly high, right? But and this is a whole tangent that I would love to talk to anyone about all the time, because I've definitely done a lot of research and kind of unpacking about what happened. But because preeclampsia is so pervasive in the United States in particular, suffice it to say that I had probably too much trust. In our family, we placed a lot of trust on doctors. Like, we really elevated their status. And whatever a doctor said, I followed, always. And so I didn't realize how strong of a relationship I had with a doctor's authority until Jade's birth. And it broke me when and I'd always been treated well by doctors too, even with Hunter's birth, when I had postpartum hemorrhaging. My obstetrician at that time, like, I felt like really took care of me well. And that was just not the case on December 23rd, 2019. And I'm still working through that. And I really feel as though that the problem is that fear was warranted at the time. And now there is no baby in my belly, and I'm still petrified and have a lot of mistrust for the medical system. The problem is, as I get older, I really want to take care of my health. And so I am the ultimate loser if I avoid going to the doctor because I'm afraid that they're not going to take care of me. And so a lot of my journey over the past couple of years in particular, because for a while I just didn't even want to look at it, right, has been about trying to find that balance between, I know that my initial relationship with doctors and their ultimate authority is not healthy for me today. But I also know that fully avoiding doctors is not healthy for me. So how can I find the balance where I'm listening to what experts have to say? It goes back to this in the hand, right? While also trusting my intuition. And I'm still really wrestling with that. Like it's really hard for me.
I know it is. And I see that. What would you say to me if it were me struggling with doctors and high blood pressure?
That's the thing, is that like I don't really know. And this comes up because Hunter has big fear. Big fear. And we were on our way to the orthodontist last Friday, and she was hysterical in the car because she had eaten a piece of her friend's fruit rope and realized afterwards that it was sticky, chewy candy, which she's not really supposed to have because she has an appliance in her mouth. And she was out of her mind upset the whole ride to the orthodontist, like almost vomiting in the bathroom at the orthodontist, doubled over in fear that they were going to be mad at her and yell at her for having a bite of someone's fruit rope. And this doctor could not be nicer. Like it was so misplaced, misguided.
Yeah.
You know, it was so not related to fact. Like she's never really had a bad experience at a doctor in that way. She's never really had anyone yell at her in the way that her mind thinks that she's going to get yelled at. And this has come up at her in her volunteering opportunities. This has come up in her extracurriculars. This has come up with doctors. And so I just tried to walk alongside her and also end it as soon as possible. I was like, Hunter, we just need to get in there and you need to tell her so that you can see, kind of get that feedback loop. And of course they were like, oh, Hunter, no big deal. Don't worry about it. Don't be silly. Like, and I saw her visibly relax, but there's this, it's so relatable for me, but both of us, it is just not tied to reality at all. And so I don't know how to ground that because it doesn't feel like facts can ground that.
That's true. Yeah, I sit in a house full of unfounded fear, for sure.
Yeah.
The ladies in this house especially. I don't know what to do with it, and I think it's worth exploring what we can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that I've definitely talked to ChatGPT about this. I've listened to podcasts about this. Like, I understand that there are things that we can say, mostly, you know, just being physically present with someone and getting curious about what really is bothering them. And then naming it, like, that's really scary, or that must have felt awful, without minimizing it, right? And staying regulated for ourselves. So all these things, you know, great. But when it's just completely unrelated to reality, I don't know how to bring, myself included, like I don't know how to bring that person back down. And is that even my goal? Like, I'm not really sure.
In a recent episode of the Founders podcast, David Senrod brought up a quote from Jimmy Iovine, the record producer, founder of Interscope Records, and the subject of the film with Dr. Dre, The Defiant Ones, where Jimmy says, when you feel fear, you have to train yourself to take a step forward. And I believe that is the answer, but I don't know how to troubleshoot the middle part. How do you do the training?
Yeah, I don't know either. And I think I told you that in Adam Grant's latest book, Hidden Potential, he talks about how you can't wait for confidence to take the first leap, that you have to take the leap in order to gain confidence. Yeah. And so, you know, I do wonder, like for me and for Hunter, it seems like it's wrapped up in doctors a bit. And that is not something that we do that often.
No.
Is the other part of it. Is that, like,
why it's wrapped up in doctors too.
For Adam Grant, he's talking about, he was a competitive diver. And so he's talking about literally taking a leap and like learning how to do complicated dives, right? And that is something that you can practice over and over and over again. How many times a year do I see a doctor? Like 5 maximum, right? Hunter sees them the same, right? So it's like we're not able to put in enough reps for our brains to really create that feedback loop. Like there's too much time in between.
Yeah, I would argue also that there's some form of like a relationship buyer-payer mismatch in the relationships that we're talking about with doctors. When it is a cash pay doctor, I don't think you've ever had an issue.
Yeah, I
When
look forward to like transferring everything to private because I think that that will really change the way I feel about it. You're,
right,
you're so right. And one of the things that you've taught me that unfortunately you tried to tell me when I was pregnant with Jade, but it just wasn't landing because I was so spun up. Anxiety had the wheel, like Inside Out too. And something that I've actually shared with friends more recently that I think has been helpful as well is just this idea of like you are the customer. Like you actually do get to say what matters. But when it comes to the healthcare system, like I just didn't know. I didn't know that you could walk away against medical advice. I had
right.
no idea that was a thing until a similar trajectory happened with Maverick's pregnancy. And I found myself in the hospital again at 37 weeks with a different doctor telling me that she wanted to induce me because my blood pressure was slightly elevated and she wasn't busy that afternoon. Right. And it wasn't
Crazy
because,
making. It's
I mean,
total crazy making.
insanity. But like, and so this is like real stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that people should have a healthy fear of the medical system. I mean, you should have a healthy fear of anyone that you're putting your life in their hands, right?
Healthy skepticism is
Healthy.
important no matter where you are because you need to be your own advocate. You can't put your life, the next steps in someone else's hands without understanding why those next steps are what they say they are.
Yeah.
But it's really hard when it's an insurance pay versus a cash pay. And it's really, really hard if you have an employer where you get insurance through and you can only go to certain doctors. And I think that's where a lot of the fear in this country comes from, is people showing up to doctors that they have to see where they don't really have a choice. This is the one that's in network that's closest to them. They can't go get a second opinion. They're not the customer anymore. They are really in a socialist system.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about healthcare.
Sure.
I do want to talk too much about healthcare. I could talk about it all day, but I don't think it's really counterculture.
In this context, though, it's interesting that is where the fear shows up in this family.
It is. It really is. And it's not even like I know I have some friends, that really are worried about their health all the time. I am not worried about my health. I feel like generally pretty healthy.
Yeah.
It's just when I feel like I need support that I am really scared to put myself. I feel like I'm at the mercy of someone who doesn't have my best interest at heart, whose incentives are not aligned with mine.
And where you have to show up, take a test, and the results of that test dictate what comes next.
Yeah. I'm a terrible test taker in that respect.
And test taking is really a non-entity in this house as well. So that's another thing about it.
Yeah, it's not surprising at all that we send our kids to school where there are no tests because I don't like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to talk about what fear means to you because I think that you have a very different type of fear. And yeah, so what comes up for you?
What comes up is resistance. Where do I feel resistance? Where it's things that I know are good for me that I don't want to do versus things that I know are not bad for me that I'm afraid of. So I think that fear shows up in that second category where I feel resistance against doing something because I'm like, oh, this is something that I genuinely have fear about. I know it's not going to be detrimental to my mind, body, or soul, but I just kind of don't want to do it because it rubs me the wrong way.
Can you give us an example?
It's pretty simple. So the Velocicoaster at Universal. I mean, I didn't grow up doing roller coasters. And so something like that, I'm just like, I can't imagine. Now, what I found and what I've experienced since trying to attempt that roller coaster with you a couple of years ago is every roller coaster since I have watched a YouTube of the first person experience of it. So I understand what to expect. And from there, I'm able to do it. And now I kind of like watching roller coaster videos. I can't say that I love roller coasters, but I do like watching them because it gets me into a place of normalization, if you will. Like I know what's coming next. I know that these are turns. I know that I'm safe and I can get through fear that way and fight the resistance. So that's an example that comes to mind where I know that it's not going to harm me, but it's like, it makes my skin crawl a little bit.
I love that. Two things. One, when you edit the video episode of this, you absolutely have to put the picture.
I will.
Of you and me. Okay. That needs to go in there. Two, okay. Oh my gosh. I love that memory because it's so true for you and fear. And I think you've really found a great tool in watching first person YouTube videos of roller coasters. And two, I am totally kicking myself because how did I not talk about roller coasters in our joy episode? Like,
right.
Whoa, peak joy for me. Like absolute.
Well, that's kind of why I think you have a superpower is because you're able to equate fear of a very scary roller coaster with joy of that experience that you're going to feel at the end of it, and move through it and get on the ride, even if you're the only rider out of this family. I saw you do it at Busch Gardens, where you're like, oh my God, that thing looks so scary.
I have to do
I
it.
have to do it. You're like, I'm going to do it. 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 And then you like run up to the thing and you get on by yourself.
I love it. I love it so much. Like, I love that fear. I love that. Like, it's exhilaration, right? It's total exhilaration. You know, it's so interesting because I think that, gosh, there's a lot going through my head right now when we equate fear of roller coasters to fear of doctors. And the thing I think about when it comes to roller coasters is that I'm very trusting. Like, I actually believe that I am safe. That I don't know if you don't believe that you are safe, but I really do believe that, especially even just like law of averages, like I'm not going to die on this roller coaster. And I love the feeling of totally letting go. It's almost like a spiritual experience for me where I've totally surrendered to this roller coaster. And quite frankly, if I die on this roller coaster, I'm going to die having so much fun. Like I'm there. That is what broke inside of me when Jade was born, is that like I like to hand over my power.
Interesting.
And part of being an adult, like, is that I can't hand over my power. I wanted to hand over my power to that doctor because I definitely did when Hunter was born and I had postpartum hemorrhage. I was in such a state that I had no idea what was happening. I was 10 days postpartum with my first baby and like had to leave her to go to the emergency room, right? I was completely surrendered and giving up power to this person. And it worked out. She treated me so well. And I was, let's just say, because it's, you know, all of this is tied up with my expectations around the outcomes too, right? And so like I handed over my power with my OB with Hunter and my ego liked the outcome. Therefore, there was no bump on the road. I did the same thing with my different OB with Jade, but I did not like the outcome. I felt really harmed. And since then, there's been a lot of bumps in the road. It's been very, very hard for me. But I did the same thing both times. And I'm still doing it on roller coasters.
It's a great notice. Yeah.
So I think that part of what I need to learn, and I hope that maybe this is something that I can learn alongside our children, is when it is okay to surrender, when it is safe to surrender, and when we actually have to really own our power.
Yeah. Reflecting on this, my fear shows up in places where surrender is necessary, and I don't ever think it's safe to surrender. So I do not like giving that up.
Yeah.
I mean, you even see it at the doctor where I'm like, no, this test is the one that you're going to give to me. Like this is my labs that I've gotten from a different doctor. I'm just bringing this to you to inform you that I am healthy. Prove me wrong.
It was so funny, you guys. We went to the cardiologist together, of course, this past week, and Greg was showing him his lab results. And of course, Greg had an Excel spreadsheet with like the past 5 lab results that he'd had over the
5 years.
5 years of lab results. And he's like, I know that this is really high, but let me tell you that I have made peace with this because this is really low and I'm on a carnivore diet. So I know that this is why it's okay. And he was just like, right out of the gate, just pitching his reasoning why this measure that was completely way higher than range was okay.
And I'm like, prove me wrong.
I know.
And he's like, you're right.
Well, no, he said, you're not wrong, right? I don't know if he said, he's like, we don't have enough data. I don't have any data to refute you, right? Is what he said. And so if you're comfortable, then I'm comfortable. But I don't think he felt like he had a choice. Whereas me, I'm like, please just tell me I'm okay. And he's like, okay, let's run these tests because it'll give you peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. So surrender, that's a really great notice that you do well with that in places where you feel like you're going to be safe. Fear now shows up in places where you felt like it used to be safe to surrender and now you cannot.
Can I just tell you that it feels a little bit like an immaturity? It does feel a lot like an immaturity in me where I don't know, because I want to strike this balance between like childlike glee and joy, which I do think really does somewhere come from this, like, I am safe even when I surrender. And then like and then when that doesn't work out, like having to know that I need to be an adult in the situation.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
I know you don't. It is a little...
it's immature.
It's not immature as much as it is you feeling like you have a lot of places where you have to be overly responsible and wanting for some places in your life for you to just be able to walk in and somebody else is responsible.
Yeah. But to treat me with care.
Of course, to treat you the way that a parent, a loving, doting parent would treat you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Okay.
Life lesson, though. There's no places in this world where anyone outside of your immediate family is going to have the incentive to treat you the way that you want to be treated. And you show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome.
Well, so it's true, though, that the incentive at Busch Gardens and Universal and Disney World is for me to not die.
Yep.
So I feel like our interests are aligned there.
Totally. But how many rides get shut down
Well, that's a whole nother thing.
as a result of?
Well, I'd actually prefer that, though.
Sure.
I would prefer that because I do put my life in their hands.
But that's the thing. If you show up and you're outsourcing the whole joy component then and the fear component, then they have the right to shut down half the rides, and it can suck.
Yeah. We love amusement parks here in Florida. Some of us more than others, but
I'm warming up to all of this. It's new for me. It's not something that I did much as a kid. When I was 12, I liked to go to liquor stores and drive into Manhattan, you know. I wasn't driving at 12, but
this is what I mean about you were so mature so early. Like I was not doing that at 12. I was riding the rides.
yeah, those were my roller coasters, getting in cars with strangers and going to parties.
It's amazing.
I know, I'm still alive. Yeah, so.
Okay. So we've said a lot about fear. Shall we move over to grief? Or is there anything else you'd like to say about fear before we move over?
No, let's move over to grief.
I hate to say it, but you are our resident grief expert. So I'm going to let you open.
Well, I don't have much experience with grief as a young child, and that's pretty wonderful. I think that grief for young children, especially hearing from you about all the death that happened around your 4th or 5th birthday, is tremendously sad and unsettling, but also creates this feeling like the other shoe could drop at any moment.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about that for a moment. So when I was 4, my mom's mother and sister, who were very involved in my life, died within 6 months of each other. And it's hard for me to say for sure how that has affected my life. But I do think that 1990 was not really a time where you talked much to your kids about death. And I definitely took away the idea that people could drop dead at any moment. I just don't know that any of us really allowed space for our grief.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have a playbook for grief from those experiences.
Right. But it's stayed with you. And I remember it showing back up when Hunter turned 4, you know, when your grandmother passed away. It's really hard for young kids to have this sense of impermanence around the people they love. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know what to do with that. What I notice a lot about our kids is probably similar to my brother and I growing up. Our kids talk a lot about death, just in kind of like playful ways, not like in a sadistic way, but more just like, oh, who's going to die first? Mm-hmm. And they're curious about it.
Yeah.
There's no grief that they've experienced necessarily, but they're curious about it and they don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, the founder of their preschool died this year.
Right.
And that was their first experience. She was someone that they saw quite frequently. They weren't super close to, but she was kind of like an angel on their playscape and someone that everyone looked up to. And so we watched them move through that grief and talk about how they just want to hug her again and they don't understand why she died. There were a lot of questions, right? And some sadness, but mostly a lot of questions. And I think that when I think about grief, the thing that has been most helpful to me, 2 things really have been most helpful to me, if I may. The first is from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's like a grief expert and talks about the different stages of grief. She defines grief as any time something is taken away without your consent. So obviously we think a lot about grief around death, but it could be a divorce or the end of a relationship or the end of a friendship, right? Anytime that there is something that you didn't necessarily want to end or don't feel like you had consent in ending. And I've definitely experienced grief in those ways. Really with, the ends of friendships in particular, more recently, through, I think, no fault of anyone, but just kind of growing apart. And you've really supported me in my kind of wrestling with really going through the different stages of grief, through ultimately accepting the end. But then I think there's this other type of grief, which I gratefully have not experienced, which is the one where you are with someone all the time and they are a permanent figure in your life. And then I think there's this extra layer of grief, which Andrew Huberman talks about, where grief is essentially a disruption of the go, no-go signal in your brain. And so he describes it as reaching for a glass of water that is continuously moving just out of reach. And it's this rewiring of your brain that has to happen over time because you can't pick up the phone and call that person. They aren't downstairs at the breakfast table. And I think that that is the grief that really only you know intimately in our home.
In a way, for sure, as it relates to my parents dying in my 20s, definitely experienced that type of grief. However, it's a bit meta because both of my parents, I witnessed a dramatic change in each of them that was foreign to me and resulted from a dramatic change in each of their lives that was foreign to them, where their new normal looked nothing like what they had grown accustomed to. So, to take it one at a time, I lost my mom well before she died. Mm-hmm. She lost herself well before she spiraled into depression. She lost herself when we had to sell our childhood home to pay family debts. She lost herself when she had to move in with her mother, who was a big antagonist, protagonist in our lives, somebody that loved her dearly but didn't know how to show that love in a constructive way. She lost herself when she and my father had to move into that house with her mother and was back under the same roof of her mother. She lost herself when she couldn't trust necessarily the things that she had trusted in her friends, in her relationships, in my father. And so I watched somebody that I knew so well turn into somebody that I could barely recognize. And that was the hardest thing for me. When she died, I remember looking at her body and hoping that she had found peace finally, because she was struggling. She was really struggling. Interestingly, from what we now know is hereditary bipolar. Mm-hmm. And then for my dad, I watched him lose his wife because he didn't fight the resistance and he didn't necessarily hold himself accountable to. He put his needs to be a provider in front of his needs to be an honest, loving, doting husband, the man that he was. And I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if it was just him being somebody who thought that he could catch back up. But he created a big sinkhole in his business. And financially, which created massive problems for our family. And so I watched him move from this place where he was respected and cherished in the community to basically turned away and became a pariah. After my mom died, he moved up to Connecticut to live with his mother. And after she died, he had another year or so where he was battling terminal metastasized prostate cancer. And so I watched him and the man that he was, and I remember him to be, turn into this shell of a man that when I saw his body after he died, I was like, well, I hope he's found peace. So the grief and the mourning process that I experienced was far more in the metamorphosis. I guess can that be used negatively too?
Sure.
Yeah, in the metamorphosis of each of my parents. Because as Huberman says, I was reaching for a glass of water that I was used to drinking every day and it wasn't there. Yeah. Just a lot of really sad turns of events that I had to sit with by myself. That was the hardest part, was that there was really no one to sit there with me.
I promise to sit there with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Do you have moments where grief comes to you today about them? Like, what happens? I mean, I'm sure you do. So what happens in those moments? Like, tomorrow is your dad's birthday.
Yeah.
What's coming up for you?
I've had many acts in my life, and unfortunately, my favorite act so far is one that hasn't overlapped with either of my parents. And that's really the hardest thing about it. It's not missing them for what we experienced, because, I lived up until I was 18 under their roof. We had 99% of the time that we would ever spend together.
And it was good times.
Yeah. So that was beautiful. And then we had a really bad chapter. And then that was the end. And then today, I look at what could have been, and it's not grief for what I lost, but it's just really, and there's no empty hole, because we don't know how this family would be with them in it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certainly a place at the table where they would have slot in nicely and been very appreciated.
So the grief that you experience is primarily one that they are not here to enjoy these times.
It's like fan fiction. It's like I can write all the fan fiction in my mind and in my dreams about what could have been, but I'll never know.
Yeah.
And that's the grief, is not being able to do anything more than author those spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Are there times that you think about them more than others, like dates or on the tennis court? Like, when is it most likely to show up for you?
When I see the big stupid grins on our little kids' faces, just like crazy teeth and all up in my face, I'm just like, oh my God, they would have loved this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where to go from there.
I think it comes back to sitting with our kids in grief and just being prepared to sit.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we can do to make it better, but what we can do is to normalize the grief. I think that sitting with it and helping them understand that this glass of water doesn't go away in your body and soul just because it goes away in the physical world, because it's out of reach.
Yeah. It makes sense. I think that if there's one thing I know about when someone that I'm close to is in fear or grief, it's that I now know that I have no idea what is going on in their heads.
Yeah.
Like, this is one, maybe it's true of all emotions, but it definitely comes up for me a lot when someone is in fear or grief within this family or within my friendships. And so I think this idea of sitting alongside someone rather than trying to take their pain away is a really important one for me to remember, to mostly stay silent, but also get curious around what's going on, because I know that if I try to guess or project what is inside their heads, I am truly 100% of the time wrong. And so it's about accompanying someone on their journey and just being a witness to the experience, regardless of how badly I may want to stop it, to make it stop.
Yeah.
Are there any lighter or more beautiful aspects of grief that you can share?
Something about not carrying the relationship for the baggage that it would have brought, may have brought, could have brought. Something about not holding on to the baggage of that relationship and just remembering all of the wonderful moments, all of the lessons as we're doing this podcast, just remembering the special connection on every level. It's hard to do that when someone's alive.
Sure, I understand.
It's hard to do that when someone's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this idea of like this perfect world where, we're with our parents and they die peacefully of old age in the 90s and hundreds, and their great grandparents, and but at that point, they've been involved in your life for a really long time. And there's a lot of baggage that we hold on to as adults that are related to our parents that we can let go of when they pass. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily rewriting history, but it is being able to pen my own future without needing to think about what they would think. Not that they would think we're doing anything bad here. They'd love this all.
Yeah.
But we don't have to be, for example, we're in Florida.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here if they were here.
We might not be here.
Well, maybe they would be with us. But
maybe they would, but we got to chart our own course.
It's true. It's true. I do think
all of the things.
Yeah.
And so, I feel very lucky to have had the foundation that I have. I also feel very light when it comes to my own future. And the only thing that weighs me down is that feeling of lightness is something that I've wanted for my whole life. And so getting it feels really selfish and without the intended collateral damage. Like I would probably trade a lot to have them back, if that makes sense. But having, I don't know, just being able to be my own person, I guess that's the only other side of grief that I can think of that creates a little bit of like the bird leaving the nest.
Okay. So we've said a lot. We definitely don't have all the answers to this one.
I don't even know what the questions are. This one is just like sit with your kids in fear and grief.
That's right. So I think that the most important thing about sitting and facing fear and grief is that we do it together, right? It's that we are not here to rescue one another or our children from these difficult emotions, but it really is an opportunity to be present with one another and to be connected in a new way. Connection doesn't always have to be about joy and fun and silliness. It can also be extremely connecting to sit together through sorrow and pain.
Yeah. And I've connected with our 7 and 5-year-old quite beautifully around getting on roller coasters together. So.
Yeah, wussas. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you, Goosey, for your honesty. I love you.
I love you.
Hey guys, if you're still here, you're definitely our kind of person. Thanks for spending this time with us on the most important thing. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to follow us wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone else building family culture on purpose.